last month we covered target and goal setting. You got to hear how we deal with our target setting in our office, and as with a focus on from personal, professional, fitness, relationships, but also primarily how we boil down our real estate businesses into number of conversations, number of offers, number of appointments, and how you can, as an agent or as an investor, work through your year. And I would be remiss. So this gentleman, he introduced me last month, and I would love to introduce him this month as he dives in. I was essentially, a lot of you knew me, like a duopreneur since like 2005 until maybe 2018 or 19. I had like me and like one other person, and like an administrator and an office person, but like I was trying to run this whole business with like two people. And I never understood what true scaling meant. And I never understood what the power of surrounding yourself with someone with the exact same mindset is. And a lot of you might have had that feeling when you kind of meet somebody over a coffee or a phone call, and you just like get that feeling, like that synergy, like, holy cow, like this person's going to make a dent and be very impactful in my life. And when Matt applied to be a part of our company, he applied for an entry-level position as our acquisition rep, to be going out and searching and meeting with sellers. And I first thought he was a virus because there was a video link that he had emailed me that showed some guy in the Carolinas leaving me a 3-minute long video. And I didn't know why he was leaving me this video because I had forgotten I'd actually put the instructions in the job ad to leave me a video, but no one ever did that. So I never thought it was real. So here's this virus that came to me in an email, and I didn't even read it until like 2 weeks later. It popped into my inbox. I'm like, what is this? And obviously, I mean, there's so much. Matt has his own bio. I'm sure he'll go over some of it, but he has his own experience in the Carolinas building and then selling a large portfolio of rental properties to Blackstone, now BlackRock Investments. A lot of you know that. He then worked his way into getting a full-time job with them for a whole bunch of years, traveled the world, ran a whole bunch of commercial projects. And then he came back to Roost here in Massachusetts. And I've just been honored and privileged that he's there every single morning to help push me and push the team. We're both servant leaders to our team, and it's very important to me to be surrounded with positive, awesome energy. All he cares about is your success. And I love him for that. So Matt, thank you for the years of service. Thank you for all you do on a day-to-day basis, and take it away on Condexes.
Awesome. Well, I don't know how I can even begin to follow that, but I'm going to give this a try, folks. Again, first, and thank you so much for everybody. I know this is busy times, interesting times, and the fact that you all have chosen to spend a couple hours of your nights here with us tonight means the world to us. So thank you so much for humbly spending some time with us here tonight. Let me just go ahead and get my screen share going here, as we have now hit that point in time. There we go. Minimize that. And if I can, there we go. There's the slideshow, and we're going to play it there. So I tried to put this in the box as well for a poll. And I guess the question that we'll have is, how many of you have ever bought a Condex before? And if you ever have bought a Condex before, you can just go ahead and drop it in the chat box. Was it a positive experience? Was it a negative experience? What was your overall experience here tonight? Or what was your overall experience going through it when you bought the Condex? Let me go, so before we get into it here tonight, we'll give you a little bit of a sense of who we are and what we do on these types of events. What we're going to do is we're going to walk everybody through our numbers, our rehab, our evaluation. We're going to give it a full behind the scenes curtain, everything that we have seen as a company evaluating the property, how we're approaching the rehab, how we're approaching our numbers, how we're approaching managing the rehab. We are an open book. Normally we'd be doing this at the property to give everybody a sense and opportunity to walk the property, touch the property, see the property. We have a video here tonight to try to go ahead and recapture that feeling. We hope to be able to do these again very soon. We love doing these. This is something we thoroughly enjoy doing. So hopefully everybody is able to get some value out of this, as Condexes are actually incredibly popular here in Massachusetts. And even in New Hampshire as well. We're not going to forget about our New Hampshire friends, even though it's a little bit trickier here, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes. But with that being said, let's get right into it. This is the property in its condition as we bought it. It is a small little property. It is a small but beautiful property. It is right off of the main stretch of Woburn, right off of Montvale Ave. It's 2 minutes by car, about 8 to 10 minutes walking, depending on how fast of a walker you are, right into the heart of downtown Woburn. There you go, right past the Bolorama, and you're there. It is a small, about 800, 900 square feet, 2-story with a 3rd floor on top of it, basement as well, side-by-side unit, which you'll see in the video exactly what we're talking about here. Not in the greatest condition. This was a direct-to-seller opportunity. We didn't use an agent. If you joined us back in November for our property tour, you heard us talk about how we buy properties from agents. This was not bought from an agent. This was bought directly from the sellers. And quite honestly, they had let the property go. Call a couple of things to your attention, just as you could see it right here. We'll start on the floor on the kitchen. You can already see the tiles in terrible shape. It was cracked. It was peeled up in some segments of it. You've got cabinets that are falling off, cabinets that are mismanaged, cabinets that are completely just in disarray there. Look over here in the living room. You can see that this is just years and years and years of dust, dirt, grime, smoke, whole bunch of other things that are just piling up there right on the property. So a lot of beautiful things going on. There's another picture that we'll show here in a minute. This is the stairwell. I always say you want to judge a property, judge it by the stairwell and the shape that it's in. The one that you see here on the would be my left on the computer screen's left there. Oh, that would be right. On the left here, you have the main set of stairs going up to the 2nd floor. This is the front doors directly would be, if you're looking at the stairs, would be right behind you. You can always tell a lot of about the property by the staircase. Most people say it's the kitchen. I say it's the staircase. You can always tell how well a property's been loved, used, and abused by taking a look at the staircase right there. The second staircase that you see here is actually a staircase that goes up into the attic space. And yes, I promise you, those are in fact the stairs. Those are the stairs that lead from one of the bedrooms all the way on up into the 3rd floor. Now, in this particular case, this was a multi-generational family living under one roof. They were actually using that room going up the staircase there. And you can see the Boston Celtic and Believe in Boston flag right there at the top of the stairs. There was actually another bedroom up there. I don't know how they were able to do this. I can't imagine it was a bedroom up there. I am 6'3". I stood up there a couple of times. I can't imagine doing it. It would be just a massive undertaking in my mind that somebody would even conceive of having a bed up there. But in some cases, this is what people do. The other thing, and you can kind of see it in this picture, is that in order to access the staircase, they had pretty much knocked out this wall that was right here. This whole wall is kind of exposed. So you would come down the stairs, and I will tell you this is a very dangerous, it's a very steep, not the sturdiest staircase in the world. God forbid you had to go to the bathroom or needed something in the middle of the night. It would be most treacherous trying to come down that stairs. So we are definitely in our rehab budget trying to address that. We'll probably just use that as storage at the top. We won't be advertising it by any stretch of the imagination. The bedroom up there and this staircase really was actually redone by the seller at some point in time in the last several years to make that so it was a bedroom, and it was something they did themselves. So yes, lovely unit across the board there. So there you can see the property card, just to give you a sense. It is a 1-family residence. When you hear the word Condex, immediately the things that come to everybody's mind is it's actually a condominium. That is actually incorrect. A Condex by nature, and we'll touch on the definition here in a few minutes, by nature is actually a side-by-side single family. It was originally a duplex that had been basically sliced down the middle and is a single family residence on both sides. So it is a single family. You'll notice it is in an R2 zone. It is a multifamily. On this particular street, I counted when I was there over the weekend again, just to make sure my count was accurate. There are 14 Condexes on the street. There are 4 single families on the street. And this is a very lengthy street. I only went up to the stop sign and it continues on for another maybe about another mile, just under a mile or so. But just on the block, so to speak, there are 14 Condexes. So this is at one point in time a pretty popular area. And you can see the total area is 1488 but the total living area is 864. So it's very small. As I said, it's 2 real units of living space, 3rd unit of storage, and then the full basement, which is hard for anybody above probably 6 feet to stand up in, as there is a low ceiling height. But that is where all of the utilities, gas, and boiler system, our hot water heater are as well. It is listed as a 2-bedroom, full bath, 1 full bath upstairs, and then there's a small, very small actually, half bath. If we go back and look at the kitchen picture here, there is a very small half bath right here on the very corner of it that you can't really see. I will not lie, it is as small could be. It would be hard for anybody really to use that restroom or that bathroom there. Bottom line here. So let's talk about where we are just to give you a sense of it. Motivated seller, multiple generations that needed to separate and move into different places. They had aspirations of kind of not disappearing, so to speak, but kind of moving on to different spaces. They actually had another home as well in, I think it was either Woburn or Stoughton. I'm blanking on which one it was. But they wanted to kind of divest of all of their properties that they had and move into separate living situations. They knew the place needed a lot of work, and they were afraid of putting it on the market and not having it sell. So they came to us. We were able to facilitate not only the purchase of this property, but then also handle the disposition of their other property that they were looking to sell as well. And it's a Condex. And there are a lot of different things and a lot of different moving pieces with regards to a Condex that we'll touch on here in just 1 second. And we'll actually touch on it right now. So what exactly is a Condex? A Condex is a side-by-side home. It's a townhouse style, for lack of a better term, meaning it has a shared roof. It has a shared centered wall going down the middle of it. And it shares a foundation and it shares an exterior siding and all those different things as well. It may be set up as a condo association, but that is highly, highly, highly unlikely. It may or may not have some sort of condo fees, but even that is even less likelier than being set up as a condo association. Unless you have a very fastidious owner who is insistent upon having a strong sort of maintenance schedule and strong sense of understanding that this is a shared property, there probably isn't going to be a condo association unless you reside in the great state of New Hampshire. So I want to make a shout out to all of our special friends there in New Hampshire. A Condex falls under condominium rules. I did not know this until I actually spent some time researching up in New Hampshire after somebody had mentioned on our team that this might be the case. Lo and behold, it is correct. Condominiums up in New Hampshire are required to be signed off from at the highest levels. They're from the Attorney General. They originate in the Attorney General's office. So they have to be signed off at the highest levels. Therefore, every Condex in New Hampshire must have a master insurance policy and some sort of condominium rules and regulations. So if you are from the great state of New Hampshire and you do a large book of business in the great state of New Hampshire, keep in mind when you're looking at a Condex, there is a master insurance policy and thereby at least some sort of condominium rules, condominium associations, probably very loose, but there probably is something. So when you have your title company up there in New Hampshire, not lawyer, your title company, do the research for the closing, make sure all these things are unearthed and what the policy is. When I say master insurance, that does not necessarily imply that you then don't have to have insurance. The master insurance policy is going to be separate from your individual unit. It basically means in that case that if a tree falls on the property, if there's a bolt of lightning, if there's a fire, the common areas are all going to be covered. It does not mean that you are off scot-free. So if there's a master insurance policy, there's got to be an understanding between the unit owners as to how that money is pooled to be able to pay for the insurance policy over the course of the year. So there's a lot of different things. If you're not quite conceptualizing this, fear not, we have a video at the end of it. We'll kind of walk you through of it. We'll kind of walk you through it, all of it. But it is a vastly different thing than just a plain old multifamily. A lot of people, when you see side-by-side units, immediately launch, oh, that's just a multifamily. It's a duplex. It's side-by-side. It's not stacked. That may or may not be the case. You actually have to look at it to see if it's a multifamily and thereby owned by one owner, or if it's a Condex and potentially owned by two individual owners. So let's talk about where the pros are with a Condex and why somebody might be interested in buying a Condex. Well, it's cheaper than a regular single family home. It's probably also on par with buying just a flat condominium. But the difference there with a condo that you're going to buy, you may or may not have a high amount or a high fee every month due to your condo association. You also probably get a yard. Yes, it's going to be smaller than a single family yard, but a yard nonetheless. So if you're comparing it to a single family or comparing it to a condo, there are going to be some definite pros and cons there. Ideally, when we're talking about the type of person who's going to be buying this fixed up unit or fixed up home from us when we buy it, we're really looking at maybe that first time home buyer, or maybe that home buyer who's maybe owns a condo and maybe looking for that next evolution up on the chain of home ownership. Something maybe a little bit smaller than a regular single family home, maybe something with not a lot of yard upkeep or general maintenance as well, but they do want to get into that home ownership level and not just a condo fee where they can save maybe a little bit of money on their mortgage. All things to be considered, but there are definitely some pros. If there are pros, however, there are definitely some cons. Cons are a lot simpler. They are going to be smaller than a regular single family home. By definition, it's two homes carved out of one home. So it's going to be definitely a smaller than what you are regularly thinking about. Just keep in mind, this is a less than a 900, almost 900 square foot home that we're going to be talking about. It feels very tight. It feels very compressed. All the exterior maintenance and upkeep is shared by two owners, meaning you better be able to get along with a neighbor that you have next door. If you two don't get along, what happens if something with the exterior, falls apart or needs fixing? Say the roof has a massive issue and needs repair. How are you going to be able to sort that out if you don't get along with a neighbor or have conflict with a neighbor, or the neighbor doesn't necessarily have the funds to be able to pay for their portion of the bill? So there's a lot of risk that you're taking on here, and we'll touch on that risk here in a second and what you need to be doing when you're evaluating if you're an investor or if you're an agent and you're looking to sell a Condex. So let's talk about it from a rehab planning as an investor first. So when you're thinking about a rehab, it's entirely interior focused. The reason why is that potentially you may or may not be able to do anything on the exterior. So you have to weigh that out. If you need to fix the exterior, what's the game plan? Are you going to try and approach the next door neighbor or the other owner of the next door unit to figure out if they're willing to participate in any sort of rehab? Are they willing to maybe put up some financial stake in fixing what needs to be fixed? The worst possible thing that can happen when you're talking about a Condex is now all of a sudden you have a beautiful interior, but your exterior is probably less than perfect or less than ideal. And if it was just a plain single family house, you probably would have been able or wanted to address it. Now, you can certainly go ahead and tell the exterior or the other owner that you plan on doing something with the exterior, and you can explain to them that potentially it's in their best interest to go ahead and have this fixed as you would like it. But you better be sure there's a firm understanding that they're all right with it, because you take all the risk in that regard. You do something wrong or something goes awry, you potentially are going to be on the hook from that other seller. So you better have all of that very clear. If you're talking about trying to just look at the interior of the property and not the exterior, you better be sure that your interior or your exterior is in pretty good shape, or have a game plan for how you're going to deal with then having to potentially approach the other unit owner and say, we've got a problem, we need to address it. How best can we do it? The other thing that you've got to be able to factor into is, what is your resale price? Normally, when we're looking at doing a single family home, there are tons and tons and tons of properties that we can pull from potentially for comps. Maybe not necessarily in this market when there are only 3 or 4 properties on the market at one time in each town and each city. But historically, it's very easy to find a single family comp, like apple to an apple. Same type of house. They're all detached, roughly the same square footage, roughly the same bathrooms, half a mile to a mile apart. You have no problem. With a Condex, it's a little bit more challenging. It's not a condo, so you don't want to compare it to a condo, and it's not a single family home. It's kind of right in that middle, kind of no man's land. So you got to make sure that when you're looking at comps, you're looking at attached single family homes. You got to find the apple to the apple. You don't want the apple to the banana or the banana to the orange. There's going to be a little bit of a challenge there. When we went ahead and, picked this property up, we really only had about 2 properties with which to look at. That's not a lot for us. So we really had to feel comfortable and confident in our number when we were looking at it to make sure that we understood what exactly it is that we're going to do. I will say this, Condexes are more popular, especially in denser cities. So you should have some semblance of at least 1, maybe 2 properties to pull from. If you go further and further and further and further outside of the cities, they're going to be harder to find. But when in a town like Woburn, we are actually probably very fortunate that this house was so close to town that there were plenty of opportunities for us to pull from historical records to take a look at it and say, yes, there's an option there. The other thing to think about is if you buy both units and have the ability to buy both units, and you could then convert it into a regular single family, you could certainly do that. There'd be a little bit of a zoning requirement and there'd be a couple of loopholes to jump through. But yes, you could certainly do that if you felt so inclined. However, you'd have to look at it in terms of the opportunity. You have to look at the exterior and see if it needs works, and then you can approach the neighbor. You have to put yourself in the best position possible. As I said earlier, if you have a beautiful inside home, brand new interior, and you've done everything up so nice, but you have a siding that's peeling or a roof that needs a lot of work, what are you going to do? You're going to have to go to the neighbor and approach them to figure out what a potential game plan is here, what they're looking at, how best to do it, and potentially what that means for you. You're going to have to outlay more in terms of work. You're going to have to outlay in terms of something else on, that side of the equation. You're going to have to talk to them and figure out what necessarily needs to be done. Are you going to try and split the costs? Are you going to try and come up with some sort of agreement to figure out what opportunity is going to be done? But you're going to ultimately have to figure out something that is done before to then figure out what's happening and talk to that seller. If the next door neighbor all of a sudden says, you know what, you're right, it's time for me just to sell. I don't have the money. This is probably the best opportunity I'm going to have to sell. And we'll talk about that in a second, because you got to be careful because you're really kind of putting yourself in a vulnerable position. If the exterior of the house needs a lot of work, the next door neighbor might take a look at this and say, this is the best seller who might pay an extra premium for the house because they probably really want my unit to do the work that they need to do with it. So yeah, let's talk about price, and you might have to be a little bit cautious in the purchase price that you're going to want to pay for that house. So there are a couple of questions that you have to weigh out here and think through what the attack is or plan of attack is. I will say this, we got incredibly lucky with the seller that we have, or the buyer that we have, or not the buyer, the next door neighbor that we have next door to this particular unit. They were ecstatic. Everybody on the neighborhood was actually ecstatic to find that we were buying the property to fix it up and make it look a little bit better, because there was an opportunity here across the board. Everybody's seeing that their property values are going to go higher. And there's a specific issue that came up with a tree in the yard, which we point out directly, that I point out directly in the video that we'll get to in a second, to kind of walk through and show you exactly what we are talking about with regards to landscaping and shared potential costs. But you've got to be careful in how you approach the seller, or potential seller, I should say, with a next door neighbor. You have to come with a plan. If you just come in and say, I just bought the unit next door to you and your outside needs work, would you be open to selling? They may or may not have a motivation to want to sell, but they're going to hear that you now want to buy their house and have potentially created an opportunity to sell their home for far more than the property is worth. So be very cautious there. Are you going to just offer to outlay to do the work? Is that in your potential rehab budget to be able to do? If that happens, what sort of an agreement and clear and written, I will say this, written understanding. There are probably people on this, Zoom before who have done a Condex, agreed to do the work, had something gone awry and didn't have it in writing and have lost that protection. And I'm sure there is somebody somewhere on this Zoom call quietly nodding in agreement saying, yep, been there, that was a disaster. Make sure that everything is clearly written out as to what your scope of work on the exterior would be and what the other person is agreeing into, how any costs are going to be shared, if there are no costs shared, what all that entails, and make sure you're going to be able to get that money back in your ARV as well. And if you do approach the seller or next door neighbor to become a seller, you do it in a way that's advantageous to you and you aren't just trying to cash in all your chips for that potential next door neighbor just to cash out and make an opportunity. If you own both, you can do and fix whatever you like. You're free to do the exterior work. You control the cost. You can even potentially split the costs over two property. However, if this is the case, you have to make sure that your budget and are clear and concise. You have to understand the opportunity and don't just make the offer to buy the property just to buy it. Know your price to buy at and make sure that the neighbor isn't taking advantage of you. And also, don't just buy it because it's there and the opportunity's there and you can potentially maybe double your money. You got to think of that. That's not the case. You're not just buying two. You're buying two costs. You're buying two sets of expenses now. You got to make sure that you're doing things smart and you're doing things the right way. In this particular case, the side-by-side unit, one, it was in horrible shape. The other seller or the other next door neighbor, her property is in phenomenal shape. They've taken great care of the property. It's beautiful. They've done some work. You'll see on the video that we shot where we call out attention to that. So take a look at that and you'll see why all of a sudden they're going to be so happy to see that the side-by-side property is now going to be in better shape. If you only own one side, your budget probably will not include the roof, any sort of siding, any sort of front porch that's shared, any sort of foundation or any baseline curb appeal. You're going to have to be creative in how you're going to make the curb appeal look pretty and look fun and look catchy if you don't have the ability to do anything on the exterior to make it look nice and make it look appealing, so to speak. It will include, however, windows, doors. There is a driveway. There will be something that you might have to do for the driveway, and any landscaping on your side of the property. We'll touch on that, and I walk you through that directly in our video as well. So there's opportunity there. Let's talk about where we are with our budget. You've kind of seen a couple of the photos already. We're definitely putting in a new kitchen. We're definitely doing a new half bath. We definitely have to do a new full bath, definitely some flooring, definitely some plumbing issues, some drywall, the windows, and 100% that second staircase that we talked about going up to the third floor. So there's a lot of different things that we have going in there. Now you may wonder, well, Matt, what does all that add up to? There you go. As I said before, when we started this off, we are all encompassing. We give you everything that there is to show. We are honest and forthright with all of our numbers. Our ARV is $450,000. Our rehab budget is $96,200, not $96,201, but $96,200. We are exact as exact can be. We don't ballpark. We are as exact can be. Our purchase price, yes, you see that right, folks, $172,000 with the as-is price pegged between $290,000 and $320,000. I have to highlight our acquisition team on this. I said earlier in my introduction, I will put my acquisition and I will put my entire team, beginning all the way to the end. I will put my team up against anyone else's team in the entire country. We are seller problem solvers first. And we were able to solve their problem where at the end of the day, the price was the last thing that they were worried about. We were able to listen to what their needs were, and we were able to figure out a way to best facilitate and help them out of their situation. I'll let everybody do the math. The math will speak for itself there. What you don't see there, we aren't worried about the profit that we're going to make on this deal. That will come later. We wanted to solve the person's problem first, because if you don't solve the person's problem first, the profit's not going to matter. And there are so many people and so many times that people want to get caught up in how much money they're going to make. But did they solve the person's problem? We did a phenomenal job being able to help them out, not only buy this property, but also help in the dispositions of their other property to make sure that both their needs were taken care of. And we were able to buy this particular property at well below the market valuation of the property. So I have to highlight and commend my team on a job incredibly well done to acquire this property here. This is our evaluation. It looks a little funky. It's a little hard to read. I apologize trying to get it into the PowerPoint. We will make all of these docs available in true document form. Brianna will be able to put that out as a Google Drive. You'll see that in a second. We will also make our rehab budget available as well for everybody to take a look at. So Brianna, if we can go ahead and take care of that right now, that would be phenomenal. You can see all of our numbers out beginning all the way to end. We are incredibly, incredibly thorough in our evaluations. We take a look at everything. We leave no stone or rock unturned. We don't just do back of the envelope math. We take a look at everything and see how everything equates out to from beginning all the way to the end in terms of where we're going to be and what we are anticipating it going to be. As you can see, again, purchase price 173, rehab 96,200. That means we are all into it for roughly $269,000, just a little bit over 269. There you can see our numbers for our that we provide out as well. And we're in really good shape with this one. We're really excited about doing that. Quick numbers on the rehab breakdown. We have $11,000 for system overhaul and maintenance, $12,000 for the new kitchen. It's again very small, very compact. Kitchenette counters, cabinets, countertops, cabinets, flooring, appliances, $3,000 for the new flooring it definitely needs. And then, of course, we have the staircase. Here again is our rehab budget. I apologize for the trouble that you can read it. But again, we are fully, open as far as we can possibly be for every single one of our properties in terms of not only kind of how we evaluate our property, but where we come up with our ultimate rehab number. Again, all the way on through from foundation, HVAC, windows, doors, plumbing, framing, drywall, interior paint. We line item everything out, beginning all the way to end. Our construction managers, they get in the property, they come up with their numbers. We look at it, we go, where do we need to add? Where do we need to subtract? In this particular case, we want to make sure that we leave a pretty substantial amount in the new plumbing. It definitely needs a new hot water tank. We've definitely got to do some work on the plumbing for the bathrooms in both cases. And we definitely need to do some plumbing updates as well. The other big line item in here is the framing of the staircases. We need to do a little bit of a bathroom bump out there on the first floor. We're looking to gain about 3 to 4 extra square feet on that. Not a lot, but still needs a little bit something there. And then we also need to do some framing for the bedroom wall entry. So there you can see our budget beginning all the way to end, kind of where we're at. The good news about the property is the driveway is in great shape. There's a fence that could use a little bit of work, but not a lot. There are a couple places here and there. There was a pool in the backyard that the sellers had put up that we needed to take down. So we had to have the line item budget for the pool to remove that, not only effectively, but also safely. And there was a lot of debris in the yard as well. And then just to make the yard look pretty, we are anticipating having this property on the market no later than the beginning of May, hopefully end of April, beginning of May. Yes, that might be wildly optimistic, but we would really like to shoot for April, no later than May, to have the property on the market. So it's going to be coming on right around the springtime market, kind of early part of summer as well. So we got to make sure that the yard is taken care of in any and all way possible on that front as well. So this is now time to show the video. Bear with me 1 second while I pull up the video here. There it is. So this is, again, as you heard me say earlier, we would normally have everybody the opportunity to go kind of walk around the property, but unfortunately not able to do that. So hope the video will suffice. It will give you a true sense of the property. We try to highlight some things that we talked about in the presentation here as well. So we'll go ahead and give it a listen here.
All right, hi everybody. We are now live, or not live, but we are now at the property 9 Garfield Ave in Woburn. As I step back out into the road here and go across the street, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Here, if we stand back here, you can see this one on the left, this is ours, and the one on the right is the neighbor's. So this is what we're talking about with the Condex. You have the shared entrance, and as you can kind of see going down the street, we have a lot of folks who have that exact same setup here. So we'll come back around and we'll go over. So there is each door does have each house does have a front door that you could utilize if you wanted. But most of the time, the side entrance is going to be the entrance here. So there's the side entrance here, and then here's the yard, which we'll come back and look at here. So down the middle, you have the fence going all the way down. If we walk over this way, this tree, as you take a look at right here, is kind of in between. It starts on ours, but it grows into theirs, under the neighbor's side. So we're gonna have to talk to the neighbor about what happens with this tree and figure out what needs to be done with it. As you can see, it literally grows right through the middle of the fence. So if the tree comes out, then you've got to repair the fence and make it a little bit of a straight line. If I stand right here, you can even see that the fence kind of waffles a little bit all the way on down, and then waffles even more at the finish. Have a complete fence in some way, shape, or form, missing a couple of posts or stakes, whatever the correct terminology on that is there. But there you can see from the side of the back of the house. So the neighbors at one point in time clearly did something with a little bit of a dormer there on this. I tried my finger right there on that dormer. So that's interesting. They also look like they've done a little bit of a bump out on their side porch. They cover it and to make it completely covered on their side. You can then look at ours. You know, if we were to dormer out, we'd be dormering, but we're not going to. We'd be dormering right here and then covering it right out there. Not sure necessarily we're going to be doing a covering, but, you know, it would be doable. As you can take a look at the roof, we can't really touch the roof and we can't really touch the siding because it is a Condex. That doesn't necessarily apply to us. If we wanted to be using it, as we've heard us talk about a couple of times here tonight so far, that just doesn't necessarily apply. When you're evaluating a Condex on the exterior, as you heard us say time and time again, what does the siding look like? What does the roofing look like? What does the foundation look like? All those things don't necessarily just affect the property that we have. Again, property is from here over, and we go inside, we'll show you kind of what more we mean on that. But from here over, that's not our property. We don't own it. Somebody else who owns it. So if you're talking about things that are regarding the roof and talking about the siding and talking about the foundation, what is the measurement, or what is the mechanism is probably the better way to say it, the mechanism in place to be able to utilize these types of things, to be able to put all of that in place. So that's the exterior. You've heard us say. Not a whole lot to be done. We're actually in relatively good shape. That the exterior of the property is pretty well maintained. There are a couple little spots here and there, but for the most part, it's actually in pretty good shape. There's no signs of waffling on the siding, the windows. On the exterior, they're all looking relatively good shape frame-wise. The roof is actually in really good shape. So we're in decent shape on that way. You come over here, yeah, under there, that's a little dirty. That's a little muddy on the, little dirty, little disgusting on that side of it. This side, the entranceway or this porch is in really rough shape, but hey, that's ours. We can deal with that. But there's no signs, even on this side, there's no signs of the buckling or waffling that you see on this type of siding. This isn't, this is true siding. You can hear that. I don't know if you can hear it on the video, but you can kind of take a look at it and see what it is. That's true, just regular old fashioned vinyl siding, not a whole, anything spectacular about any of that you see there. And then we'll quickly go back to the front of the house again. You can see, and then we'll go in the house and we'll talk through. So again, when you're evaluating a Condex and you're looking at it from a Condex perspective, there's a lot of different things that you have to take into account. Again, here over, that's ours. Here over, not ours. So you can take a look at there. Good roofs in good shape. Gutters and downspouts all look like they're in good shape. So overall on that front, we're relatively, and even the soffits, as I peer up and look up, even those look to be in pretty good shape. Then it changes. As we move into the house here, it becomes a completely different story. Now, granted, we will add the caveat here that this house has been demoed already. So, we're in the process of starting it. So we'll talk through a couple of these things. I'm just going to stand over here. Come right in off that side porch. Again, the door right here. You come into this area, you're in the kitchen. And then you have a little what will be a little bit of a bigger half bath. So just think about this for a second. Right there is the toilet, right there is the sink. This is very small and very cramped. If you're going to the bathroom, your feet are going to be right out the door. So not the most ideal situation. So we're going to have to figure out something to make this a little bit of a bigger footprint, not much bigger. If you take a look at the floor, you're probably talking about anywhere from additional 3 to maybe 4 square feet of space there. So I'll stand back over here in the corner. Okay, so just think of it this way. You're going to have kitchen cabinets going all around this side of it. Have more, potentially some more little cabinets over here. Stove will most likely still stay in this general vicinity over here. Have a couple of different options on the layout. You could put the refrigerator, we could put the refrigerator over here. I haven't quite made that determination yet. Up along this wall, again, it becomes a question of where we are kind of looking to do with the flow. But all these things will be worked out. You could even put the refrigerator if we wanted to somewhere over here. Not quite sure. Again, still have to work out all of those details. And then, of course, have a little bit more of a kitchen island right over here with a stove perhaps there in the corner. All things to look at, all things to think about. Of course, certainly had to do something with the floor here. It looks like at one point in time there was some sort of island or something like this with the indentation of where the floor is. Simple living room here. It is a relatively small footprint we're talking about. We're talking about just around 1,000 square feet in totality. So there isn't a lot of square footage here with which to work with. So again, living room's right there, coming right into the flow. Here is the front door, right behind me here as I turn around and pivot. This is the front door. So again, here is the shared wall, going all the way up the staircase, going all the way back this way, shared wall. So when you're thinking about a renovation and you're thinking about being able to do what you want to do on the interior, you have to take in mind what is a wall that's already shared where you can't touch. Basically for us, it's from here, the staircase is pretty much where we could go. So even if we wanted to, all we could do here on this just wall right here is just paint. Anything we couldn't go further out because it would revolve, or would involve, I should say, not evolve, involve going into the adjoining unit, adjoining home, adjoining house, or adjoining section. So there's an issue there. Then of course right here is the going down into the basement. We'll go down there, not a whole lot. I actually don't even fit down there. But again, it's in relatively decent shape. That's where the unit's heater and hot water tank is, or boiler and hot water tank is. That's all down there. Foundation's in decent shape too. And then we'll go upstairs here. Up the stairs. So this is just a 2-bed, 1.5 bath. You have 1 bedroom here. It's a very fluorescent neon green that I think would glow in the dark if it was completely dark out. Interesting setup here. Yeah, simple redo floors, paint the walls. Simple work there. Where the bulk of the work here is, I'll pivot over here to show, is this beauty right here. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen. There is a 3rd floor to this home, and this is the access point to it. It is lovely in all ways, shape, or form. So this is where the majority of the budget for this particular room is going to be trending towards. So we definitely have to redo this staircase. Well aware of that. Pretty much upstairs there is just storage. It's too low to have a 3rd room, essentially. So it will be just more or less storage. But to just get these kind of more up to code, these stairs up to code, it would be a great little storage area, storage room. And then, of course, having to put new drywall up here to encase that and make that look a little bit better. Not a little bit better, repair it from its shape that it's currently in now. That will be where some money in the budget comes to here. Then we cross over here into where the full bathroom is. This is also the 2nd bedroom up here. And the closet, of course, is right here again. And then, of course, you have the full bath that we've already gutted right here as well. Full shower. You can see the tub, shower head, stuff like that. Tricky part here is, again, you have a low wall or low ceiling, not low wall, low ceiling that arches down. As I stand over here, you'll get a good sense of it. You can see the ceiling makes 2 slopes, one at the top here, one right here, and then slopes all the way down. And of course, you also have these windows, which we might actually get rid of and just encase in some sort of, that is a little bit of a hazard. So we'll have to take a look and see what our contractor decides to recommend to us on doing that. We've seen this time and time again. Actually, the seller who we bought this house from, who had another house with, had that exact setup too. So they must have had a thing for low windows in their room. So nice little, nice light. It does get good natural light. There is something to be said for that. So there's that. But again, it's a simple interior, not a simple, but it's the majority of the work here with regards to the house is all in the interior. And even if we're talking about doing anything with that bathroom, we have to be careful, because even if I stand here and look up the staircase here, you'll see it's going right into that other unit. So we're limited on what we can do and what we can't do because that's part of the shared wall space. So when you're thinking through a Condex renovation, there's two things that you need to keep in mind. Number one, where is your shared wall, and what does that kind of hamstring you or hamstring you, put you in a negative position where you can't really do a whole heck of a lot, put it that way. Then the second question is, if there's anything that has wrong with the outside, what situation is the other unit owner's position to be in? And it might be that they aren't in a financial position where they're going to want to help. So then what do? Or do you potentially just buy them out and try to see if you can buy them out and then fix up the whole thing, and now you have a whole other unit? Or are they in a position where they are willing to help and put some money toward the renovation? So think about it this way. If you have a bad exterior, where you have bad siding, a bad roof, a bad foundation, is it worth it where the other unit owner doesn't A, want to sell out, or B, in the position to want to help? What is that going to do for your home? What position is that going to put you in with regards to the home? If you fix up and make it a beautiful interior, but you have a shabby exterior, what is that going to do for the overall evaluation of your home? Make sure you're building that into your ARV. The second thing, when you're thinking about doing a renovation on the interior, and you can only go so far, you can't take down really what is a full length house wall, and you can't touch it, you can't do anything with it, you can't, other than paint it, you can't really do anything else with it. How does that affect, or how else does that change your ultimate construction and renovation plans? You've got to take all that into account, and you've got to take that all into your mindset of being able to do something with. So there's a lot of different things that you have to take in mind versus a Condex versus a single family. Condexes are great opportunities. They're a necessary opportunity. They're smaller. They're a little bit more affordable. Great opportunities there for folks to get in if they really want to buy a home. We're in a phenomenal section of Woburn too, might I add. We're right around the corner from Montvale Ave. We're right around the corner from downtown Woburn. So we're in a highly, highly desirable area of Woburn that is going to be highly, highly sought after. So there's a lot of different things that people who might be looking to get in this area would make this home desirable. It's also a relatively smaller footprint. It's also a relatively smaller size home. So great for a young couple, great for, a person who's maybe looking to downsize a little bit for any reason, or just looking to get into that first level of home ownership. So there's a lot of positives here to look at, but house needs a lot of work, as you can see. Even if it was demoed, this house was actually really not in great shape. Even now you can see it, as the kitchen's already been demoed and the upstairs has already been demoed. So there's a lot of different things here going on for us to have to work with and work around to think about. So we'll get back into the presentation. At this point in time, we'll open it up to any questions that you might have. Thanks so much, everybody.
So therein lies the beautiful property that we own, 9 Garfield Ave in Woburn. I think there was, and by the way, I'm submitting that to the Academy Awards. I know this is the year, not a lot of great movies come out. I thought the cinematography was wonderful. Great direction there. Very well shot. I will be submitting that for an Academy Award nomination, and hopefully in cinematography. And I think I will most likely be up for a nomination there. So with that being said, there were a couple of questions I wanted to address here as they came along. The first one being, when do you add that to your due diligence? And the answer to that question is before we made our offer. Our acquisitions person, when they were thinking through what to do, actually had a conversation with the next door neighbor before we even made the offer to say, this is what we're thinking about doing. It opened ourselves up to a risk because there was a chance that the next door neighbor was actually going to be the one to potentially make an offer and buy their house, and then they were going to fix things up and maybe make their unit a little bit bigger. So we kind of put ourselves in an awkward situation. It ended up being not the case, and we were able to come in and do it. But it put us in a position where we had a conversation with the seller, the next door neighbor first, had a conversation with the seller, kind of pieced everything together, took a look at the comps to figure out where our potential opportunity was to go from there. But you want to do that due diligence with regards to what the next door neighbor's situation is and what they're going to be like before you start doing any sort of evaluation, before you get into any of the work with regards to the house, because you want to know what ultimately you're going to be dealing with. If you know what you're going to be dealing with before you get into it, it's all the better for it. You're all in a better situation. You're a little bit more clear as to what can happen. You're a little bit clearer as to kind of the where things are positioning and how they're going to be positioned. So the more information that you have before you actually put out an offer there, the better off you are. There's no such thing as having too much information before you put an offer out there. So do your due diligence before you make the offer, not afterward. So does anybody else have any other questions at this point in time? We'll open it up here to discussion. If you have any other questions, feel free just to go ahead and unmute yourself, and we will be happy to answer them.
I joined late, so maybe you guys already covered this. Were there any condo docs established ahead of time? Is that something as part of your sort of exit or sell plan?
Nope. In this particular case, there were no condominium docs. There's no condo association, and no, that's not something that we are going to establish or create in the process of home ownership. As I said before, Condexes, it's very, very rare to find them. You've also got to find the right type of buyer who understands it and kind of gets it. So there may be a little bit of education that has to come with all the buyers who are interested. It's not a condo and it's not a single family home. So here's what happens. And then it's up to whoever the ultimate new buyer is. If they want to come in and change it, they're entitled to. They've got to get the next door neighbor on board with whatever they want to do. So it's a conversation ultimately for whoever potentially buys it from us to then have with the next door neighbor for however they would like to set things up.
I got one. Did you guys come up with the disposition on that tree, or how did you address the tree with the other homeowner?
Yeah, so we actually approached the homeowner directly. We actually used the tree as the approach. So we have approached the homeowner. We've already figured out exactly what's going to happen. That tree is going to come down, and we are going to split the cost on it. The homeowner next door was actually ecstatic to find out that we were willing and to talk about a plan regarding that tree. And they said that they would be happy to share in some of the cost of removing that tree as well. So it was, to us, that was the perfect kind of entry point and opportunity to begin that dialogue with them, to say, hey, this is something that we see. This is something we want to talk about. What are the options here? And what most importantly, what are you willing, if anything, to contribute? And would you have any objection if we did decide to take this tree down, to take it down, and how best would that would go? And that was all of our acquisitions guy who handled all of that too. Any other questions?
Did you do any planning for the soundproofing, column in the wall? I know, was there any consideration to that, or?
We actually did there, and that's actually a really good question. Especially when it revolves around townhomes and condexes and things like this, where you have that shared wall. I will say this, that house is incredibly quiet. And we've been there now 2 Saturdays in a row. So to give you an example, this video was actually shot, 3 days ago now on Saturday. Didn't hear a peep. And the homeowners were actually next door. They had their TV on, they had some music going. I made sure to introduce myself when I was there on Saturday. Couldn't hear, and you can even hear it in the video, can't hear a peep. I will say this, that is a consideration, that if you do go into a home and you do kind of, in the period of due diligence and the period of, as you're doing the rehab, if you do hear that there is noise, you're right. You do want to have some sort of figure out how you can either tamp down or temper any sort of noise variance or noise leakage on both sides of the equation. So there are ways around it. In this particular case, hasn't been an issue. It's clearly a very well-built home. And the fact of the matter is that they had their TV and their stereo going on. They were listening to opera, actually. Didn't hear a peep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Got one since we got some dead air. The upstairs, are you guys going to reconfigure that? It looks like from the video, Matt, you're going into that.
Yep.
The back bedroom, I guess you would say, to get to the bathroom.
Yep. It's
I
not.
Weird houses bring weird people. I'm kind of curious if you guys are.
We're actually, and I think Nick will agree with me on this. We're seeing this. This is probably what, Nick, maybe the third or fourth house. And John's on here too, but this is maybe the third or fourth house that we bought that had this exact style setup for whatever reason. We seem to have put out in the universe that we want these types of homes to then have to reconfigure. Luckily enough, in this case, there is a somewhat easy reconfiguration to make here. If you're staring right into that bedroom, that's a closet right there. So instead of having that be a closet right there in front of it, we're going to reconfigure it to put another frame and door. So instead of going into it, you're going to go right into the bathroom. And then you'll have another door that you can go into the bedroom. So we're going to create another door that kind of runs parallel or perpendicular. I guess it would be perpendicular to it at a 90-degree angle. So you can then go into that door and have privacy into that bedroom. So if you have that second bedroom and you either have a visitor or a child or something like that, they don't have to go into your main bedroom to then get into the bathroom. Not necessarily the most ideal. You're right. Different folks are different strokes for different folks. Some people, that's not a problem. For me, that would be an issue. So figuring out how to, repurpose that entryway there so you don't have to go all the way in and disturb somebody in their bedroom to go use the bathroom if you needed to in the middle of the night. But we had that built into our rehab budget. That's something we thought about when we looked at it after we had done our initial walkthrough with the sellers to figure out kind of where things are and what things need to be done to make it a more true ideal two bedroom situation and set up there.
Brian, what was that quote again? Say that again. I haven't heard that before.
Strange houses bring strange people. You get a house that's got, that one bathroom, really the one shower, whatever, is tucked into somebody's bathroom. Weird houses bring weird people. That was the quote.
1000% agree with that too.
And you see, you can always find a buyer and you can always find a renter for something like that.
Yep.
But odds of getting some sort of, kook or way up higher that you get somebody that's a little out in left field that you maybe don't want to have as a tenant for you.
The old hierarchy of need, housing fits it. And unfortunately, in this business, we see folks day after day, almost every single day, doing something weird and quirky. I mean, as you mentioned, not only do you have that bathroom, but then you had somebody living up on that third floor.
Yeah.
It's the nature of this beast that, the people who we come across, there was a point in my time in this business that I tried to understand it and tried to put myself in their position. And I realized it's just not possible. And it's never going to make sense to me, but unfortunately it makes sense to them. And at the end of the day, that's what matters.
I'll jump into one more thought on that, Brian, because you bring up a good point, right?
Yeah.
So we did a great presentation at Black Diamond. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was called adjustments or was it apologies?
Mm-hmm.
Apologies in real estate. Some of you guys might remember that. It was basically looking at one of maybe 10 to 12 adjustments that would have to be made to a house, right? Like near a railroad, near high tension wires with a weird floor layout, right? A Jack and Jill bathroom. Like there was all sorts of like small little things that would adjust it. So to answer to your point, it would I would almost say to everybody like, well, a bad floor plan is an adjustment of 15% of ARV. Now, of course, that's a generality, but it's funny that you mentioned that. Right now, with no inventory, it's really stupid and kind of sad how, someone who's just looking for an affordable place to live and get into a new school system when they were forced to downsize, right? Or forced to move and there's nothing on the market. You never know who you're going to get these days. You might get someone who has to settle, because they can't wait any longer for their house of their dreams to hit the market. It's crazy out there right now. So you brought up a good point though, because I would usually just say, okay, bad floor plan, let's number one, try to fix it. If we can't fix it, okay, we got to adjust for it in our ARV. And in this case, I mean, I think we're putting it out at full market, and we're going to see what we get for it. You know, we'll see what happens.
And Nick makes a great point on that. The fact of the matter is that there was a ready-made solution to this floor plan, that it's easy enough for us to fix. Hey, put up that new door. Instead of having the door here, now it's here. That's a ready-made solution. If there aren't ready-made solutions in that regard, and thank goodness that the house didn't go the other way, and where we would have had to have gone into that the side-by-side unit there to try and fix that problem, it would have been really, really hard to come up with some solution for that. And then, as Nick alluded to, now we're having to do some sort of slice in our ARVs. But in this particular case, there's a ready-made solution right there and ready to go that we can solve.
Matt, quick question. What do you do in your due diligence? Do you have any contingency plan if when buying a duplex, if you had to touch the roof or the siding?
I think as you're going to go ahead and do this evaluation, I think we've kind of danced around this, but this is probably a good opportunity just to give an example and kind of talk through that situation and scenario right now to say, look, if at the end of the day, you know that you have to have some sort of roof or siding or, you know, insert exterior line item here, and you go to the seller and say, we need to do something here that needs to be done. You know, are you aware that your siding may form a leak, it may form a crack, and over the course of time, you're putting your property in danger as well. And they say, well, you know what? I've lived here for 15, 20 years. It hasn't been a problem since the time I moved in here. I don't see it being a problem now. So no, thanks, but no. Then you've got to come up with plan B to say, okay, how does that then affect my rehab budget? Am I going to go ahead and just say all things exterior go into it? You know, what happens at that point in time? Do I try to go ahead and approach the neighbor to buy them out? Do I approach them to say, okay, if you don't want to fix it, I'll have to fix it myself, but here's what it's going to entail for me. It might inconvenience you a little bit, but let's make this very clear right now, what I'm trying to accomplish. So it's all about that kind of figuring out before you put any pen to paper, before you make an offer to the seller that you're trying to help and assist first, you got to have an understanding of what you're getting yourself into and what you're looking at in totality to figure out what angle do I need to go at here to be able to position myself in the best way and the best foot forward here.
Thank you.
I did actually text our acquisition rep who bought the property for us. He's on the call. John, is there anybody or anything that you feel like when you went through this, that number one, you had wished you had done beforehand or reversed anything on the timeline? And is there anything that you wish you could have done differently in the process of buying this home? Not to say that anything was done, because it was a great buy for us. But is there anything you wish you had done a little bit differently on this?
As far as the acquisition?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of. I mean, I think you kind of nailed everything. I mean, this was kind of a 14 months in the works. I mean,
you took my thunder on that, but I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, so it was 14, 15 months kind of process. And that's why I was late tonight. I was actually doing the walkthrough for the client's property in Stoneham. You know, so there's a lot of moving parts on this. So in order for this acquisition to happen, they had to fix their credit for their other house in Stoneham that they were trying to sell, so they can, you know, sell this house, Schofield Ave, and the property in Stoneham, and they can buy their house over in Woburn that they're closing on, which that's getting delayed. But originally I came to this house because they wanted to add tile to the bathroom floor on the second floor, which I actually ended up walking through there with a contractor, and the subfloor was basically gone. So they asked me if they originally asked me if they could list the house. And as you could see, I mean, I think we have 5 or 6 20-yard dumpsters now in there, and that was pretty much to clean the stuff, and it's not even properly demoed yet. So what we do in the acquisitions team is we're problem solvers first. So as Matt kind of indicated, we really picked this up for a really good price, but she just wanted out of it. So we put a little bit of money in their pocket, and we were really patient. We purchased it on their terms, helping them out. I actually helped them out also with pretty much everything. I mean, even my commission that maybe Nick doesn't want to hear, my listing commission over in Stoneham, because that was something else that she needed help on. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of moving pieces. It was 14, 15 months. And it's really going to be a good acquisition for the company.
So there are a couple of things there that I did want to mention. Number one, anybody who thinks that this isn't a long game, this is entirely a long game. This is something that evolved for us as a company over 14, 15 months. This is not something we picked up on a dime. We had to really work with the seller to make sure that every single one of their moving pieces kind of fit together. It's a true puzzle. Every step of the way, we had to make sure that we were doing exactly what we say we're going to do, when we say we're going to do it, in the way we say we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. So there are a lot of pieces trying to evolve here, and being of service and being a servant to their needs first and foremost at the end of the day is what got this property for us. So people who say that this isn't a long game, money is 100% in the follow-up. And to be able to stay on top of these people, constantly evolve, constantly figure it out. It was a very happy day when John finally, told me, hey, we got this, we're good to go. Docs are signed, we're in good shape here. Let's move forward with this thing. It was finally being able to see this thing come together after probably hearing it on our morning call for 4, 5, 6 months at a time. But then in terms of just talking to the next door neighbor, that could have killed the deal. That could have very quickly and very easily had done any number of different things, from the next door neighbor saying, you know what, I'm going to buy it. Or no, you can't touch anything. I don't want to even think about anything with the exterior. My inside is perfect. I have a beautiful home. I'm not even willing to consider any of that sort of stuff. But the fact that they did come to us and say, yes, if you're doing the interior, it looks great and you're going to do it the right way. And we've had this conversation with probably 4 or 5 other folks on the street. They're like, hey, whatever you want to do, sign me up. Having those dumpsters come in and out, it's a tight little street. Everybody's like, if you need us to move our car, just knock on our door, let us know. Happy to move it. Whatever's got to be done to make the property look on the interior look better and help our property values, all for. That's a dream scenario for us. That is the ideal picture perfect scenario for us, but it comes together because over the course of time, we didn't rush anything, we didn't hustle anything, and we tried to be of service to not only the seller, but also the community writ large as well. So I commend everybody on the team, every single person on my team, some way, shape, or form, touched this deal in some way or in some shape or form or capacity. And this was a true team effort to bring this to fruition, and even just in the condition that it is. And make sure that you follow us on all of our social media. We'll give updates on our social media, AA Real Estate Group and AA Real Estate Mentor. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and social media. We'll be providing updates over the course of the progress. And you can also see, we just did a video last week too, of the property that we did the tour here in November up in Bald Hill, as that gets very, very close to the end. So if you haven't followed us on social before, make sure you follow us on social media as well. So you can see the updates for not only this, but all the properties that we have as well. Anything else? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time here tonight. Nick, I will turn it over to you for the close.
No, we're in good shape. I hope people got some value out of this today. My first Condex takeover, I just wanted to share that. It was kind of cool. There was an HOA, and I had to play. The outside was horrible. The exterior, as Matt said, was god awful. And I'm like, oh geez, am I gonna have to like budget to do? I can't just do my half, right? Like I'd have to kind of keep going. So like, do I just sort of budget to have to paint the entire house and to have to do the whole roof and to have to kind of spruce up the entire basement because it wasn't like divided? Like, And ultimately I had to budget for that. But at the time, it was my first time even doing that. And I even worked with my attorney, who is our platinum sponsor now, Cornelli Law, to take over the homeowners association, because the other tenant, the other owner, had no interest and had no money to do any of this. So I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to take care of the exterior. I'll take care of the roof. I'm going to take care of, like, I even have to fund the reserve account because there were no reserves, and you can't get a buyer to buy the Condex without 5,000 in reserves on the HOA side. So like, I just wanted to add that to the whole equation. Like, okay, if I have to budget an extra $15,000 to take care of roof, painting the siding, and to fund a reserve account, will you allow me to redo condo docs, get a new bank account started, get a new master insurance policy so that I can even get someone else finance to buy this unit? And I brought over a nice bottle of wine, and I had chocolate strawberries, and I was just trying to be very nice to her. And it worked very well. So well, in fact, once we finished our Condex, she's like, I just need to sell, and I'm in a tough situation. I'm in a short sale. Can you buy my unit? And that's really the key. If you provide those solutions, right? If you do have an HOA, it makes things a little more complicated, and you have to budget to taking over a lot of that stuff, because you're probably not going to get any money from the other owner. So an extra 15K is what we budgeted for ours. If that helps anybody, great. That's my value add to end the conversation with.
I wanted to ask a question off of that.
Yeah.
Do you regret spending that extra 15 grand after the fact that you then bought the second unit?
Oh, well, of course, obviously not. I was planning on swallowing the 15 grand as costs of doing business, because I had the profit margin on that was going to be 50,000 for that one Condex unit.
Yep.
So if I have to pay 15,000 just to learn the process of going through an HOA, taking over the trust docs, becoming like a property manager of back in the day, I didn't have much experience. It was totally worth it. But yeah, the 15K turned into another deal, right? So I made the 50,000 or the 35,000 the first one, plus I took over her deal for 50,000, and plus she gave us a raving testimonial, right? Because we helped fix her whole association, clean up her whole outside of her property, and we were able to buy her property and get her into a new place that she could restart her whole life on. It was awesome.
There we go.
That's a bottle of wine. Our next meeting, everybody, calendar this. It is going to be, oh God, I'm on the wrong month. Oh God. You guys are, oh God, now I'm in March. Please, someone tell me. The 16th, February 16th. There will be a new link posted. We're going to be going into, we have a meeting next week, actually. Joe McGranigan is still on. It's Wednesday evening. Check into the multifamily group of New Hampshire. Oh God, what?
New England multifamily meetup.
New England multifamily meetup for the link on that one. If you're interested, that's Primary Bank Commercial Financing 101, also under the REI Unleashed umbrella. And then next month, we're going to be here with the buying multifamily in COVID times with a fund manager who's doing some big deals and big stuff. That's kind of our intermediate and advanced group, but everybody is welcome. And we'll take your feedback from this meeting and carry it into the next one. But thank you all so much for being a part of REI Unleashed. Join the Facebook group, answer those questions. We'll all approve you tonight, and definitely add value, engage. We're going to have the #1 most engaged real estate group in New England, and that's our goal. Thank you for making that happen. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And if there's anything we can do to provide more value, just let us know. Appreciate all of you very, very, very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great night.